Hi, everybody, and welcome. I hope you are hearing me all right. We are going to get started today on another workshop on Promptcraft. Hi, my name is Eva Haining. It's great to see you here. We are going to be diving into a 90-minute experience where this is an interactive webinar. Now, I am hoping that those of you who are hearing this, whether that's in StreamYard or on other tools like Facebook or potentially YouTube, will reach out to me. You can reach out via the chat. So if you drop a comment here and say hi, I might be able to check in with you as well. So I do see that we have a few people coming in to join us. We're going to give people just a moment to get started. And welcome. Hi, everyone. It's really good to see you. Feel free to see if we can get our comment structures working. I am going to be presenting some slides, and I'm going to be bringing those slides in very shortly. So I just wanted to prepare us for that as we get going here. And welcome everyone. As we are just getting going, I can see that at least a few of you have made it into the room. I'm actually going to be bringing in a new version of these slides. So this workshop has evolved over the last few weeks. We're going to be using a new version of this workshop today that includes a handful of new slides and new tools. So I'm going to be bringing in a different slide deck here. And let's bring that one in the stream instead. And it's really great to see you all. Thanks for dropping a comment. That really helps me to know that we are live. Great to see you, Alan. Great to see you, Julian. Any of you who are joining us for the first time, once you've been a part of one of our workshops, you are welcome to join back in. And so I'm going to come and say hi occasionally, and we're going to walk through some things together. And we're going to be using a handful of tools today. So just to give you a very quick rundown and premise, again, my name is Evo Haining. You probably came here through evo.ist, which is my website, or through Realitycraft, which is a group that we maintain for this community of people who have either taken this workshop or are doing this work together. We're going to be exploring a number of different tools today. We're going to be starting in Midjourney in Discord. So I'm going to be bringing up for you just what I'm going to talk about Craft for generative tools, getting started with tools like Midjourney and how to get the most out of them through using style words, lighting types. We're going to be discussing prompt tools and resources that you can use to improve your craft. We're going to be discussing things like weights and measures, image prompting, and how that works. We are going to then jump into a handful of other tools that are built on Stable Diffusion, such as Simulacra, which is a 3D tool for doing design together. And then we're going to discuss things like ChatGPT and how the language of Promptcraft is changing across different types of tools. So there will be time for questions throughout, and I'm going to do my best to really pay attention to both windows. This is designed to be an interactive webinar, and there's going to be some time for you to share the types of prompts that you're trying to engineer for and how you are sitting with specific types of questions and inquiries and challenges in your own work. So this is just a healthy reminder that we are here to create the worlds we want to live in, and that our words matter, and our actions and our decisions that we make here matter. So we are here to hold a community for each other. And I hope that you will encourage each other move forward, whatever that looks like for you. I look forward to wonderful things that you create coming out of this. So we do invite you to the Realitycraft group. There's a place where you can share your progress on an ongoing way. So what we've been working on here in the gallery, in the studio in Oakland, is a bit of a hybrid. Now we are doing something that is a game. It is a process. It is a design lab. And we are really thinking about artistry and craft as processes that we are learning together. And so that's part of why we come together here and really explore what these processes look like. I'm going to go ahead and pull myself out of the stream now so that you can see these slides. Is there a Discord you want us to join? And I'm going to continue to answer these questions as you ask them. I currently participate in over 200 Discords, and we're going to run in through a few communities you might find useful at the end. We are going to jump into messaging with the Midjourney bot directly. So as we jump into testing with Midjourney as our first place today, we are going to be using Discord and specifically using the direct messaging tool with Midjourney. So I just wanted to prepare you for that. If you have never used Discord before, you might want to install it, but that may not be necessary. There are other ways. Midjourney, however, is sort of bound to the Discord interaction. So just giving you that sort of heads up as we're thinking about what that looks like for you today in this workshop. So you'll be able to screen share here. I'm going to jump between the screen sharing. But you're also just welcome to try these things at home and tell me through the comments what's working for you. So there are ways in which we can have you engage and come in and screen share. So Promptcraft, what we're here to learn today, is a process. It is a process of forming language, of forming reason, and it is a way to realize and design your generative creative works. Now, that spans all different types of media. We are going to be exploring images primarily today, but we are going to discuss things like ChatGPT and video and immersive tools as well. So a prompt, what is a prompt? It is a formation of words, images, numbers. It can be emoji in some tools as well. All of that is language. And so we are World Language Promptcraft, and we're also here to explore sort of what those differences look like depending on what tool you are using. So we are going to discuss, for example, Stable Diffusion on the left versus Midjourney on the right, why they give you different outputs even with the same prompt. And we're going to explore a little bit of what that looks like. So if you are not interested in being on Discord today, but you want to try these things in a browser, you can go to a free web version at diffusion.land. So that is your alternative path today. If you are going to try these things, maybe you're listening in one browser while you're trying things in another tab, or you're doing it on your tablet or mobile phone, whatever you want to do. Diffusion.land will let you choose between Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. The other tool that you could consider on the web for Stable Diffusion directly is beta.dreamstudio.ai. And that is a version of Stable Diffusion that is free for at least a few uses on the web. Now, keep in mind that most of these tools are free for the first few uses, and then they're going to ask you to pay. So I want you to think carefully about how you use them today, because you may run up a free trial, and then you may want to, go try a different tool and see what happens. So it looks like my slides are act funny, and that's fine because this is a good time to jump over. All right, so let me jump back. I want to make sure we are here in StreamYard together and doing okay. All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing at this point. And what has happened is I have so many windows open that we're going to take a moment to reset and then go into a new tool. So we're going to jump into Discord and what that looks like for Promptcraft. When we're forming a prompt, there is a specific way that each tool wants language. And so within a query, basically an imagine prompt in Midjourney, there's a specific way that those want to be formed. So let's see, I'm going to go to this slide here. So if you have never used Discord before, or if you've never used Midjourney within Discord before, the first place you start is by typing slash imagine prompt with a colon. Now it will automatically fill this for you once you start to type imagine. So this is how you do a prompt. This is the baseline of how you start a prompt. And if you're thinking of Promptcraft as a form of like music, like jazz, this is sort of where you start. This is where you lay your baselines. And this is the beginnings or the sort of seed for what's to come. And I want to thank those of you who are participating and leaving comments. It has been really great to see your comments here. And I'm just going to give some of you a shout out later. We will get to more of the questions later. So feel free to drop your questions in the comments throughout the conversation. And we will jump in and answer some of those, especially in the last 15 minutes. You're also welcome to do those in the Realitycraft group on Facebook as well. So imagine, when you do the imagine prompt, it is going to create a set of images based on the prompt text you provided. In Midjourney, that is a grid of 4 images. In Stable Diffusion, depending on which interface you're using, it might be 1 image, or you might be able to choose how many images it's going to give you. Again, some of those are tied to things like credit and payment on the cloud. So I want you to think about how each query, each generative input output is a cost in terms of computing power. And while these tools are free for now, they probably aren't free long term. Some of us do pay, like I pay $30 a month for Midjourney, which gives me unlimited access to it. So speaking of Midjourney, I'm going to see if it'll let me share over to that window now in Discord. Or not. Maybe it will. The Midjourney bot. All right. I want to go to the Midjourney bot. And you're going to see it's going to take just a moment as we're getting set up here. Unfortunately, like many of you, I am on many Discord channels. So you're going to see some of that reflected here as we're working together. I have been working on a query around some crystalline cats. And so we're going to explore what the tools do and how to use them as we look at some of the Promptcraft I've been doing around these crystal cats. So let's make sure that you are seeing everything smoothly. I'm going to add our Discord to the stream here. And what we have is this is the Discord window within a browser. And please disregard everything that's basically on the left side of the window. What we're going to be looking at is on the right side specifically. What we're looking at is the input and output. And we want to take a look at how that's rolling out. I'm going to give you just a little bit of cover on the other side so we can focus on what matters here, which is that center point. So when we're looking at how to get good generative input outputs, we start with that window and we type in imagine prompt, and you're going to get 4 images out. So in this case, where we're looking at the cat example, I had done a series of these where I typed imagine prompt crystal and cat, real catwalk, female model, walking photo. And so my goal here was to get to something that was a mix of a human and a cat. I was working on getting something that looked like a high fashion couture piece that had both cats and humans. And so I did many different iterations and what we call remixes. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that because you will see sort of how an idea evolves. This is using Midjourney, and I'm specifically using Midjourney version 4. Version 4 is going to get me the most lifelike results. Some of these style choices may not work for you, and some people find that they like version 3 or other test versions better. In this case, we're going to be specifically looking at version 4. So when I did that first prompt, crystalline cat, catwalk, female model, walking photo, I put the cat face on there as an emoji because I did not want it to lose the cat. That was very important to me. So in this case, I did not give it a lot of style words, except for things like vibrant, to help it find a palette that would work for it. I really focused my first 10 words on what is the subject and also a little bit of how it should render them. So that crystalline word is very important here because, as you can see, it's delivering something that sort of almost becomes like polygons, right? So when I click on and see the output in the bottom here, you're going to see U1, U2, U3, U4, and then V1, V2, V3, V4. Now, there's also a 9th button here, this right here, which we call a reroll, or just basically regenerate, try again, and give me another round of outputs. So as you can see, when I clicked on one of these, it turned to a different color. So it turns green. So if I click V4, V in this case stands for variation. And I am going to get new variations, 4 new variations that are going to give me different outputs. Now I have set it for remix. And so at this point, I can add another detail word. Maybe I want to put it in an urban setting. Maybe I want to give it a different rendering engine, like I want cinematic lighting. These are all words that I can put either at the very beginning if I want them to be very important to the prompt, or at the end if I want it to perhaps inform the prompt and how it's rendered at the end, but maybe not in the first few steps. Those last few words are not going to be as important in the rendering process as those first few. So we're going to go back down and see what's come once I've done these. When you're doing a generation in Midjourney, it takes about a minute. I think they say 50 seconds on average. But I wanted you to see what some of these outputs look like. This is what we call the first upscale. This is not the max size of upscale. But when you hit that U1, U2, U3, or U4, you're going to get an image that is roughly 500 pixels. And then if you upscale again, you can upscale max to about somewhere over 1,000 pixels. Your total outputs, even when you go to an upscaler, are going to be something like 2,000 pixels. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. I would love to stop and take some questions here, but at this point, I'm going to also really go through a little bit more of our sort of slide content and talk about what are the elements of a prompt. So, and thank you, by the way, for asking questions along the way. If you have questions or if you need me to stop and back up, we are going to dive into some of those parameters. And I think a few of you have questions about image prompts, and a few of you have questions about parameters. So we're going to talk about those sort of 3 elements of a prompt. This is specific to Midjourney. So first off, let's talk about what's in a prompt. So after the Imagine prompt, you might have an image that you are prompting from. This is not necessary. It is possible. It is possible in Midjourney to have up to 5 images there. And to do so, you basically have to give it a URL on the web, a PNG or a JPEG to find. And you can do that up to 5 times. That goes at the front of a prompt. And then that second part, which is what we just talked about, is the blue section, the text of the prompt, the language. Now, again, this can be numbers, words, emoji as well. You want to think about ordering your words so that the first few words are the most important things in your picture and need to be the sort of subjects, the object, the foreground. If you're thinking about painting from the foreground to the background, you're going to start your text prompt with the foreground description and end with the background description. I hope that makes sense. I might repeat it. Start with describing the most important objects or subjects in your story, in your prompt, and then work your way backward so that words like black background or urban environment, often you might want to put those at the back unless they are the most important thing. So text prompts, it really matters where you put the words. And this is true in many different tools, not just Midjourney. However, it changes. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how it changes when we go to other tools. Third, we have those parameters. And some of you have been asking about aspect ratios or how to get it to not render something or like an image weight. All of those are within parameters. And so we will describe those. And then to be honest, in Midjourney, there are a number of parameters that work tremendously well that Midjourney has in their Git book that you can go through. So here's an example, and I want you to go ahead and try something like this on your own. Start with 3 words that resonate with you, that you like, that might not have anything to do with each other, but might speak to the concept you have in mind, right? So this example, confused, surrealist, dripping. So there's an emotion there. There is a style, surrealism, and there is a sort of concept, right? And by mixing things that are more difficult to describe, that are not specific objects, you're giving a fair amount of room to the generative tool to discover something on its own. And you're going to find some very interesting results in that space. And so this is where words like surrealist can be very fun in your own experimentation. And I want you to go ahead and try this on your own in whatever tool you happen to have in front of you, if that's Diffusion Land or if that's Midjourney, whatever you may try. I will say that surrealism in particular is a very rich space to play from and explore. You might try other types of art that you really like. So if you're thinking about style words, think about things like Art Nouveau, Art Deco, a particular motif or media you like. So stained glass, mosaic, pottery, all of those, embroidery. I don't know that I have the embroidery pieces in this slide deck, but I've been doing some very rich explorations with embroidery, for example. So this is where you can think about how to take your ideas and maybe push them into a different direction, or maybe try to create something that feels perhaps authentic to a period of time or to a particular world that you're trying to create. And when it comes to worldcraft, this is where we're going deeper into what does it mean to create a reality together, right? All of this is informing the language you're going to use. All right, so we're talking a little bit about those cat gems, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more deeply about not just Midjourney, but then how to use Midjourney and other tools to then create your own models and then create your own characters and bodies of work. So when we're doing a variation, that is how we begin to see sort of different iterations on a theme. When I click that V1, V2, V3, or V4 in the Midjourney dialog, what I'm getting is a way of which I can then have it iterate and potentially remix as well. Now, Tara, you asked a good question about how to pick Midjourney version numbers. In the Discord prompt line, you're going to click \settings. And I will put that in a banner for us so that we can all see it and make it super simple. But what you're going to do is just type settings. And specifically what that's going to do is let you go and pick between your version numbers. It will also let you turn on remix mode. So if you do not already have remix mode on, you might want to do that. That's an opportunity, an opportunity space that you can explore. So by doing that, by going into your settings, you can refine some of your output choices, your quality choices, fast mode or relaxed mode in Midjourney. Those are specific to Midjourney. However, you do have some granularity that's different in Stable Diffusion. And we can talk a little bit about that later as well. So we're going to dive into a little bit more of those parameters. And some of you were asking about how do I get to an aspect ratio, right? So a parameter is specifically formed. We just did that settings flip right there. Some versions of Midjourney support parameters that aren't supported in later versions. So this currently affects image weights, but only for a few more weeks. This will change very quickly. It did affect aspect ratios. However, I do think some of those choices are now being able to be pushed up to version 4. So if you're finding that a specific thing comes back as an error message when you type a parameter, it's because it wants you to be in a lower version. So, for example, setting your settings to version 3. So when you're making those algorithmic modifiers, a parameter is basically modifying and getting to some sort of change in this case, aspect ratio. So I think it was Alan asked a question about different aspect ratios. You're going to type 2 hyphens and then AR, lowercase, and then you need to give it that aspect ratio that you're looking for. And I believe you can use either pixel or ratio, but use a specific aspect ratio, for example, a cinematic one, or, if you're doing a slide deck, getting to a slide deck aspect ratio that works for you. So if it's not working for you in the current version, downgrade one version, and that will help you get there. If you need more detail, the Midjourney Gitbook is highly detailed. So as I mentioned, ratios do get normalized. You can use, in most cases, pixels. And here are some pixel counts that you might want to try. The upscale max being the maximum number of pixels you're going to get out of Midjourney. Now, other tools will be able to do a sort of a more elaborate upscaling, and that is a tool that you might, we'll discuss that at the end in terms of tools that you might want to go to, for example, if you're going to print your objects. So upscaling specifically, not just for print, but for publication, you might want to specifically take things out of these programs and then train a model to do something, or upscale them and then prepare them in another program. Some people obviously use Adobe Creative Suite and Photoshop. I also use Canva. And if it's telling you invalid parameter, then you're going to need to downgrade to version 3 and do the settings \settings to get to version 3. And then it should allow you to do that aspect ratio choice. However, you will lose some of the quality that version 4 provides. Again, I think that is changing in the next 2 weeks within Midjourney itself, and it isn't the case in other tools. On Discord, you type, as I was going before, \settings, and then you're going to see toggles. And let me see, and I can bring this up. just walk you through it super fast since we're here. So when I type, you let me? Yeah. When I type settings, there's a couple of different toggles I have there. Sorry, lost it. All right. So it says MJV1, V2, V3, V4, base quality, low or high. And you're going to see other types of modes that you might want to explore as well, right? So you might want to try MJ test photo. You might want to try a different upscale quality. Each of these are going to give you different outputs. You do need to pay to use private mode. Remix mode is what I've been using in order to add words when I'm doing a variation. And fast mode is what I'm using right now, but obviously it's not that fast because we are still pretty slow today. So that's realistically where it's at. So I hope that made sense in terms of how to get to those tools. Yeah, great. All right. So image prompts. As I mentioned before, an image prompt is at the beginning of a prompt, and you specifically want to do this by adding an image to the beginning. A JPEG or a PNG, you need the URL specifically to do this. You can do it directly in if you're in a DM chat with the Midjourney bot, for example. You can do this by sending the image to it and then opening that image and grabbing the PNG or the JPEG URL if the image isn't already on the web somewhere else. And then you're going to form your prompt like this. You're going to put that URL at the front, and then anything else goes after. You don't have to use a comma. You don't even have to use those carets. However, you can if they're useful for you. So this is an exercise I want you to go ahead and try at home. You can see what happened when I put a photo of myself into the Star Trek universe. That was some time ago. And I honestly don't recommend using proper names or other people's copyright. And this is something that I don't personally do anymore. I gave it some thought. I didn't really enjoy the experience of that. And I didn't enjoy from a creative perspective where that took me. So I avoid using other people's copyright or proper names. In this case, however, I used an image of a gentleman who passed away in order to prototype a memorial. So obviously, there are lots of ways that these tools can be used with permission and consent in order to do good concept development work. The image weights are currently working in V3 of Midjourney, but not in V4. And that's, again, about to change. So we're going to discuss a little bit of how image weights work. And image weights are usually formed at the end as a parameter with 2 hyphens, hyphen, IW, and then anywhere between 0.5 and 5. You need to give it a number. So that is going to help it tell how specific do you want it to look like that image. Right now, those parameters are not as sort of informative and liquid as they could be. Yeah. V4 is going to give you better outputs on some things, and you might want to try other tools like MJ Test Photo if you're in Midjourney. So test and test P, test photo mode. You can switch versions even without going to settings by using 2 hyphens and then asking for test or test P. However, it will send back an error message if it doesn't like what you're trying to do. Keep in mind that those error messages and those capacities change very quickly. We are seeing new versions of Midjourney every 3 months currently. So I would expect that these things will continue to evolve very quickly, and we will see some granularity there. Putting a link to your photo didn't work. Interesting. So usually in V4, you should be able to put a JPEG or a PNG in there. And I can walk you through a little bit of what that's looked like in a few different projects that I've done recently. One second. So let's say we're here in our Discord window. Now, a couple days ago, I was working on some logo designs for a community in Discord that I work with. And other folks were doing logo iterations. And what I did was sent those logos in together. And I sent it basically as a double image prompt. So this one, I literally put 2 images in there. And you're going to see that I put them in at the top, and then I just grab the URL. You have to make sure it's the version of the URL that has PNG or JPEG. It doesn't want to use a sort of malformed URL. So I just want to sort of prep you for that might be happening. It does happen quite a bit. So I apologize. Discord is jumping around like a Looney Tune today. It's not screen sharing well. Okay, so here I shared those 2 images. In order to put an image up in the Discord DM window, if it's not on the web elsewhere, you can hit that plus sign and upload a file, and then that will put these images up. And then what I do is I click on the image, I right click on it to copy the image address. So once I have that image address in there, that should give me exactly what I need. So then I come here and I say imagine prompt, and I copy and paste that image address. And honestly, I can stop at the PNG right there. But this is going to give me, interesting. Cannot use version 4 with only a single image prompt. It wants text with the image. That's right. So one thing to note is that in version 4, if you're going to give it just an image, you need to give it something else. And that could even be an emoji, right? So in this case, I could just give it an emoji, right? Like fire, love, whatever. 3D logo, right? Words like 3D logo are style words, graphic design words that can help inform a process. So we're going to see what that comes up with, but you can see there that once I put the image plus something else, it did come through. So we're going to jump in and take a few questions. You had converted to V3 for 16.9. Yeah, that's all fairly common in terms of what's happening in these tools. So we're going to jump around really quick because we want to try to get over to some other tools outside of Midjourney, but I wanted to give you these resources first. Midjourney.getbook.io. This is a fantastic tool for going through exactly what are all of those aspect ratios and other parameters that are currently enabled. What do they do? How do you use them effectively? If you have a question about image parameters, it's likely in the Getbook, and that's a great place to go to get you started. There are other prompt crafter tools. Some of them we share in the Realitycraft group. So there's a prompt crafter URL that was recently shared there. There's a tool called Prompt Locker that was built by another generative art team. Some of those you can use to kind of keep track of your work over time. And some people obviously just do this in other tools like Google Docs. Some of these other resources that are here below, for example, this GitHub right here is a style guide. And I can show you very quickly what that looks like. But the style guides are really interesting because what they're providing here are ways in which you can resource a wide variety of styles. What I'm going to do is just go ahead and drop these in the Facebook group, but please reach out, and these slides can also be made available to you So you're welcome to come back through as well and click on these links. This GitHub in particular is a style guide with style types. There's also a Google Doc with this open style guide doc. Those will include style guides based on specific artists. I personally choose not to go that route when I'm working. Those are the kinds of creative choices you need to be making for yourself. I will encourage you to consider how original you can make your art, and maybe think of it like the game of password, where you don't use proper names, right? Challenge yourself to find descriptive language that helps create your world and make it real without necessarily leaning too hard on other people's style, because that's just not awesome. It's not the kind of artistry that we're looking for in the long term here. Doing highly derivative works creates these sort of AI death traps that aren't necessarily useful for the long term as far as generative art as a whole. So I will encourage you to find your own style and experiment and keep track of those experiments. This one image here on the left, for example, is an experiment I've been doing on an ongoing basis around interior design and 3D interfaces and what they could look like in the home. And so this is concept development work, one of the many ways that we use this in the real world. I will say there are a handful of great channels out there. Aerotem Art is one of the ones that I do talk to. They're about to publish a new tool for making graphic novels out of your work. So I will recommend reaching out to those folks. Many of the best teachers on YouTube are not here in the US. They're in the UK, Germany, and other places as well. So you might want to check those folks out. I will include those links in future posts. And then if you're looking for upscalers, Gigapixel, Topaz, there are tools baked into certain stock photo repos as well. So your mileage may vary with those. Some of them you get a few free upscales or a few free upscales a week, and you might be able to piece those together. So this is another YouTuber, Olivier Sarkis, who is very prolific in his videos. And if you want to go and try experiments with a streamer on a regular basis, this is one way to go. I want you to look at how he's forming the prompt here, because this is very interesting. He is trying to talk about different styles that are very effective when you're trying to do, for example, a collection that might work for gaming. So isometric illustration in this case is the style, and house from the 1929 year. Now he's formed it that way, again, because he did not want to confuse how the AI is reading the prompt. So he's putting what's most important, the context and the subject at the top, and then he's putting after a comma those style words. So this is really clean Promptcraft, under 10 words. These are the kinds of practices that will carry over not just to Midjourney, but will also work in things like Stable Diffusion. Basically everything before the parameter he could take to another generator such as DALL-E or Stable Diffusion and get, if not a similar output, at least something that feels cohesive enough. Obviously, these tools have big differences. And if you're playing in diffusion land today and you're trying the same prompt side by side in both tools, you're going to see that. This is one of those ways you can test that. If you try a prompt like this, where it put your subject, whatever the subject might be, use words like close-up or full body to describe exactly the scene you're looking for if you're looking for a character study. And then typography art, which works incredibly well in Midjourney and may not work well in other tools. So this is going to help you experiment and see where you can sort of push the envelope or maybe find a new style that works for you, especially if you're doing things for blog posts or, internal things like even presentations. This is a different one for kids for coloring books. And it's fun. This is something that you can do with kids. And we're going to be jumping into a different tool shortly where we tried this the other day. We're going to be jumping next into a tool called Simulacra. And I'm going to put a URL up for you. And I am going to be going to this same URL. And this is something that we tested the other day in Simulacra, where Simulacra is a group space for Promptcraft together. So I'm going to open up that window, and hopefully it's going to let us run all of this at once. Simulacra is a social space. You can try it now with the access code CREATE. So when you click on the AI demo, you're going to scroll down and it says try it now, access code CREATE. That is exactly what we're going to do. We are going to go to this window, and I'm going to bring it up for us in our screen share now. So thank you as we're finding all of the different pieces here. Right. So it takes a moment to load, but what we're going to do is jump into Simulacra here. And as I mentioned, Simulacra is a 3D space, a WebXR space for those of you in this industry that is specifically designed for generative play together, for discovering new ways of forming prompts, or maybe a new style, or maybe just collaborating on something together. So the URL that's in front of you, simulacra.io/ai.html. This is a tool that was released only 2 weeks ago from the team at REM5, a gentleman named Brian Skolick who brought it to us, and he is just a delight. And so alpha, this is not even like, this is like beta, early private beta, right? So your feedback is appreciated, and understand that these tools may or may not work for the same way for everyone. What I have found so far is that when I'm testing with these types of tools, and I am able to go and find, for example, a new way to do something fun and clever together in concept development. So as I mentioned, we were trying coloring books the other day. And when I was testing coloring books, I'm going to bring up a couple of images to show you, because we had a really interesting time of trying to find the best way to go about these challenges. So we're going to jump into Simulacra, and I'm going to show you a little bit of what we did the other day as well. So here I'm with 2 of you. I think Sam might be here with us today, and Romana. And we were specifically trying coloring book methods for cats. So you can see the prompt there: realistic coloring book, black and white, kindergarten, line art, meow, says the cat. And that is a reference point. So specifically, we're going to try things like this today. We're going to jump into Simulacra. Simulacra is not just a 3D space. We're going to have a little bit of social capacity there. So this is something that you can also do on your own time. You can bring your kids here. It might be fun to do remotely with family members. And you can really, think about this as a place where you can go and explore. It is currently free. The team at REM5 focuses on social WebXR experiences like this. They previously built one for the Minnesota Twins. So yeah, that's just sort of a quick rundown. What I'm going to do here is put my email address, which I probably have to form correctly in order for it to work. And it just wants to know what it can call me. And you can use a pseudonym here. I'm using a name that I actually am going to use, but don't feel like you have to. And when we're going in this space, we each kind of have a capacity to identify ourselves, not just as a name, but customize an outfit for our avatars. And then we're going into a space where we have permission to speak together. And so while I won't be speaking in the simulacra space, I'll be here on the stream with you. I hope. We're going to make sure I have audio working. This is how these kinds of handshakes work. So I think for some of you, your screen might look different. Simulacra, it is working across different browsers. I have currently tested it in Firefox, Chrome, and in Brave. So you're going to want to go to that AI.demo and then scroll down to say try it free. And then it's going to ask you for that demo code. The code is create. And if it doesn't work for you right now and you want to try this on your own time and come back to it later, it's okay too. I just wanted to make sure you have these capacities in front of you in case. So you're going to see that there are some user-generated galleries at Simulacra. I'm going to be contributing to some of those. You are also welcome to contribute to those. And Brian, the creator of Simulacra, is in our Realitycraft group. So please give him feedback if you find that these tools are useful. I am not going to give Simulacra my microphone, but that is something you can do later in order to communicate with people directly in this space. If you've ever used another WebXR space, for example, Mozilla Hubs or FrameVR.io, anything on the web like that, some of these tools are going to look or feel familiar. You're going to have access to things like chat, where you can talk to each other and think about how you want to form your prompts. And then you're going to have the prompt window that you can work in together. So that is sort of the baseline. I'm going to walk us through very quickly how we are going to do this kind of thing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about not just next steps for the industry, but how we go from ideation to finished products here. So let's see if it's ready for us. I think I've pushed my computer to its right limit today. It's trying hard to bring us in, but I have really made my browser work for it today. So we are going into an AI builder demo. This uses a version of Stable Diffusion. I don't believe it is the latest version of Stable Diffusion. You will be able to enter a text prompt. So that is the baseline. You can do text prompting here. You cannot do things like image prompting, but you will be able to try things. So I can see a few of you have beat me here. So the things you can do here besides Promptcraft are still pretty limited. They are going to be adding functionality here. But I want you to kind of be thinking of this as a proof of concept for something larger. The team that Brian leads at REM5 is pretty small, and they are quite adaptable and open to your input and suggestions. So if you're exploring these things and you want to try and, maybe try something new or see if you can work out a partnership with them to do more, I would encourage you to reach out to REM5. REM5 Studios and Brian Skolick. So you're going to walk up to the screen, and once you walk up to the screen, the prompt comes up. You have to get pretty close to the screen, and at that point, you're going to be prompted to prompt, basically. And one of you can prompt at a time. So that's where it can be sometimes beneficial to do this with small groups. We don't often do this with a larger group, but this is a pretty good load test. I don't think we've tried to do this with as many people in the space at this time. So this will be interesting to see how it goes. Each of you can basically type a prompt as soon as the last one is done. So once you see that one come up on the screen, you'll be able to save it or put in a new prompt. And I am walking extremely slowly because we are in a very full room. So that's basically how things roll here. You're going to be able to do pretty much everything we did on the text prompt side of Midjourney. This is a very light version of Stable Diffusion. It is not going to give you the granularity of a more detailed tool. But we're going to go to a more detailed tool in a few minutes. So I don't want you to get stuck on the sort of basicness of this. What this is really proof of concept around is social prompt craft, and thinking about these things as riffing on each other the way we would in jazz. So if you're thinking about jam sessions and jazz music, in Midjourney, that exists through group threads where people might make variations of each other's work. And in Stable Diffusion, that exists where people riff off each other in these kinds of environments where it's semi-social. So what you can do here include chat and audio chat. You can move, you can look around. You have emoticon animations. So if you try the numbers 1 through 9, you'll have some actions you can do. Those actions are dance around and do flips and things like that. So try and hit the numbers 0 through 9 or 1 through 9, I believe. And again, you're only going to have like the basic sort of XR level controls. You're not going to have fully immersive, like being in a hubs room or something more advanced. So just want to level set for those of you who are more advanced XR creators. If you would like to extend this experience, I would encourage you to reach out to REM5, as they are wide open and a lovely team to work with. So, whoa, that's kind of wild. Huh. So any of you who walk up to the screen, feel free to go ahead and engage the prompt window. I'm going to jump out of this window shortly because we're going to take over to another tool shortly. I do want to show you a little bit of how we organize content in terms of both the Midjourney experience, but then I would like to take you to a tool that's for world building and for building your own models as well. So this is a good place to maybe test out a few things, but like I said, you're going to need to jump in closer to the screen. And if you are there, you're going to be able to make a prompt. And if that's not working for you, you might want to come back at another time when it's a little less busy, because that's a pretty common experience, I would say, in these sort of more busy social rooms. If it's feeling very laggy, it's probably because there's too many of us in here. So these kinds of spaces are really great for small groups of people. I love that prompt, Bob Ross writing a unicorn in space. And if I walk up to the screen, I'm going to have the opportunity to either put in a new prompt or save that image. And in this case, I might want to save it. So to do that, again, I have to walk up pretty close to the screen. I am lagging up the wazoo, but you can see I can save current image. That particular pop-up only comes when I'm pretty close to the screen. But if I want to type, ooh, look, I lost a whole window. That's great. I'm going to hop out because I think my rendering is not working for us here today on this. I'm going to let you explore that on your own, because what we're seeing here, and many of these spaces are very experimental. Simulacra, which has been around for about 2 weeks, has been visited from many people, but generally very small groups only. So if you're finding that the kind of tool you're using may not work for you, it's sometimes going to happen where you have to jump to a different toolkit. So I want to prepare you for what that looks like, and also, you know, how to be relatively fluid when you're thinking about creating workflows. So I'm going to jump over to a tool very quickly here. This is called Scenario, scenario.gg. I have been using this in a different browser, so I am not currently logged in, but I will log in shortly here. What this is going to specifically do is let you train your own models and then build your own proprietary assets based on your model. So let's say you've got your own training data. You've created 500 images that help describe the characters of your world or the concept art of the buildings, right? You can use those training models to then be able to create exactly the gems, the assets, whatever you might need for your world. So this is extremely useful for games that might have thousands of assets, or for any of you who are thinking about asset creation for the 3D web, for the metaverse, any of that, for wearables. These are all things that might be useful for you as well. So just going to give you a very quick look at that. Within the simulacra environment, the point of that one is really to understand and play with Promptcraft with others, and to work with a small group of people to refine your own language. So, for example, if you're working with remote collaborators and you want to be bouncing back and forth, we have also found it useful for very simple exercises. For example, trying to do the coloring book. You can save your images straight out of there and then take them into another program. So for example, you could take your 50 images out of Simulacra and then bring them over to this tool that we're about to look at now, which is scenario.gg. And this tool in particular, also very early beta, would allow you to take even open source images that you've created in any tool, train your own models, and then make your own game assets out of that training model. So if you are, for example, concerned about the originality of your work, and you are trying to create a workflow that is independent as much as possible, while also, generative enough to meet the needs of your world or your game or whatever you might be creating, these types of tools are very useful. There are a handful of fantastic tools out there. Runway is another example. But what you're going to find at some point, if you are exploring Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, any of these art tools, is that once you've gotten to 20,000 images, for example, you're going to have massive collections, but they might feel slightly derivative either of each other or of other people's work. And so that's where it can help to then take all that work, bring it into creating a new model, and then building your original content from there. And then whatever you might go to publish, if it's a 2D world, a book, the 3D world, whatever that might be. The point of all of these tools is to figure out how you can create a Promptcraft workflow that works for you. And in some cases, you might be generating repeatedly with iterations across more than one tool. In order to refine, you might start in Midjourney and then train a model in Scenario, and then take the images out of Scenario and build a metaverse world or go make a graphic novel. And those types of workflow relationships, how do you go from one tool to the next? Those kinds of processes are still being worked out. So I want to leave some time to really talk about what that looks like, and then how creators are combining that with tools like ChatGPT, for example. So when we're exploring Promptcraft, and I'm going to bring up Scenario in another window, but I want to take a moment to really talk about the process of a workflow. I started within Midjourney exploring in depth in June. By September, I had reached about 20,000 images, and I decided to try a book. I was able to go from first generation to a book in my hand in 2 weeks. And that process is becoming even tighter now. There are tools coming out for graphic novels, as I mentioned, such as the Loom, that are going to make that very easy to do. And you can look at whether you're going to combine your own writing and your own work, or something that's an edit between you and a tool like ChatGPT. But that's how being able to go from something that feels like original content in terms of your concept art into something that then you can refine into a book. I will say Midjourney raw images are not book ready, and they're not really print ready. So when you're thinking about how do you build your workflow, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Dolly, these are first stops. But then you're generally going to want to take it to an upscaler and to a refinement tool for the creative process to be really made your own. You might want to do a lot of cleanup work. Some people spend a lot of time in cleanup, some people don't. So those choices are obviously your creative process. And then if you're trying to think about how these elements go into world building, that's the concept work that I do here in the studio. I'm happy to have that conversation with you separately. We start by scheduling a session. We can sometimes do a design lab, even with your team. This is how we do it when we're going through metaverse world building, for example. And that includes many different Promptcraft iterations. So we might have a working deck where we start with one stage of Promptcraft and end up in a very different place at the end of the week. I've done this with agencies and companies where they thought they wanted to build one experience, but after 3 or 4 versions of creative development in Midjourney, we ended up in a very different place. So I want you to feel free to explore what is going to work for you in your own creative development. Sharing your own Realitycraft, you're welcome to do in that Facebook group, because that is exactly what that's there for. And I want you to think of these groups as sort of extensions of your own creative design lab. So obviously I do the work here in Oakland. You're all doing the work in your own spaces all over the world. I would love to hear about that work. So feel free to drop a comment and tell me about how you are potentially using these tools, as well as maybe questions that you're holding for your own process. That can be around ethics, that can be around engagement strategy, that can be around participation with these tools, or futures related to 3D assets, for example. So I want to open up the floor to questions at this point. Really, we can dive into any aspect of sort of the broader futures in this space. And very shortly, I'm going to bring up some ChatGPT as well, because obviously Promptcraft in ChatGPT is going to differ quite a bit from what we've seen in Midjourney or in Simulacra, what we were seeing with Promptcraft. If you got into Simulacra and you were able to go to the Promptcraft window there, you're going to notice that it really only reads maybe the first 10 words you're going to give it. So Stable Diffusion, while you can use very long prompts, you're going to find that brevity matters, that getting your concepts down to something very focused matters. And so that work of first ideating and going big and maybe coming up with a vast collection, and then curating and editing and going back down to something that's producible. These are the creative steps that we go through, and it might take weeks or it might take hours. And so that's where I want you to be thinking about how these tools fit into your sort of broader workflow strategies, maybe as the place to start when you're doing concept development. And maybe it's later on, right? And hey, Buffy, great to see you, by the way. And you're right. Some of this can feel a little mind-boggling. So it can help to think about maybe clearly defined ways that you might want to engage these tools in your own work in ways that help you move your own work forward. And I want you to really dive deep into your own inquiry process to think about What am I working on? Where do I need support? And how does that unfold if I have a tool to support me? So give you an example. One of my open source communities is working on tooling, and someone who has never written a grant before was like, I need help writing a grant. I'm like, great, let's go to ChatGPT. And we went to ChatGPT to start and see what could happen. And I don't know how many of you have used ChatGPT yet, but I'm going to go there now and we'll see what happens. And ChatGPT, for those of you who have not used it much, is a writing tool that is specifically related to creating generative words. And it can do a pretty wide variety of generative words. So I'm going to have to remember which password is okay to use. We're going to hope this is it. We'll see how it goes. So over the last few months, I've explored ChatGPT. Just opened to the public about a month ago. But I have explored many different sort of earlier versions, not just from OpenAI, but from other tools as well. So ChatGPT around December 15th became a much more public tool. That's when the public just kind of really got access to it. And many people started exploring different ways that might inform their process. So we're going to do a few quick examples of what that looks like. Now, Promptcraft and ChatGPT, because it is a word-based platform, it can take more words. So if you're thinking about a prompt in Midjourney as being under 50 words and ideally under maybe 20, 25 words, a prompt in Stable Diffusion maybe being 10 words, like in Simulacra, like 7 to 10 words. A ChatGPT prompt can be longer and can be more detailed. And in some cases, you can include very specific reference points. So for example, if you're trying to write code, you can refer to a website that has similar open source code, and it can do that too. So I'm going to give you some quick examples of the types of things you can do. Write code for an open source program that helps us share webinars. And what it's going to do is, in relatively real time, give us something that answers to that program. In this case, it's giving me something procedural, but it's also giving me actual code that I can then copy and test in a different window. Now, this code may not be the right language for me. I didn't specify what language it should write it in. And so I might need to go back and then refine my prompt and say, actually, no, I need HTML code for a website, right? I need to be very specific about my Promptcraft here in ChatGPT. So, but what you saw just now was I told it to write code, and under a minute, it wrote code. For someone like me, who is rusty in most code banks and languages, this is extremely helpful because it would have taken me hours to do what just happened in a minute. So does this replace the coder? No, because at the end of the day, we have no idea if this code works, if it's accurate. ChatGPT is frequently inaccurate around things, not just for code, but also for scientific uses. So here on the left, I get to keep my previous chats. So for example, I had it write some scientific information, specifically about the potential uses of Li-Fi or using light as a communication fidelity for signal processing, and how crystals might play into that, right? So if I'm writing sci-fi, having scientific language might help. But I can also just create a new chat, and you can see some of these are, give me creative ideas for a 10-year-old's birthday, or help me write a story about blank. You are going to find that ChatGPT is very good, again, at creative ideation. It may not be fully accurate. It can produce things that you don't want. And you have to be a very detail-oriented editor in order for this tool to be very effective for you. However, write a grant proposal letter for funding for an source toolkit, and I can have at least something to start with, right? So this is where ChatGPT, potentially combined with other tools, can be a resource either for nonfiction or for fiction. So I'm going to stop again and take questions. We have about 15 minutes left, but I wanted you to again see a little bit of how ChatGPT works. And we can talk a little bit about how to refine your prompt craft in ChatGPT. I have found that usually it takes maybe 4 or 5 generations before you really get what you're looking for. So you see at the bottom there, I get something called regenerate response. And, maybe this letter was kind of weak, and maybe I need to edit it and say for an open source toolkit for the open metaverse. Or maybe I just need to keep refining it. And so this is where making more than one generation happen can really help to refine your prompt craft to get exactly what you want. I have found that, for example, in humor, if you're trying to write anything in comedy, you need to be extremely detail oriented. If you wanted to reference any websites or any specific data points, you should put those in your prompt. So the same way you would use an image prompt in Midjourney, if you're trying to reference something extremely detailed in the real world, put it in your prompt in ChatGPT as well. So it's very interesting. It just sort of froze there, didn't it? So there are a handful of ways you can go back to your chat conversations. This tool right now is in a very early, again, beta stage. It will be defined and refined quite a bit. And if you're trying to get to better outputs, there are groups that are very good at giving sort of the middle feedback, but you're also welcome to do that in the Realitycraft group in Facebook, because that's what we're here for, is to be able to do that sort of reflection together. So some of the questions that you were asking in the meantime. Can Simulacra generate 3D assets? Not yet, but I believe that is on their roadmap. There is a tool called Point E for 3D asset generation, but it's more like point clouds right now. I am working on open source tooling related to this as well. And stay tuned. I think we're going to see, not just Get 3D from NVIDIA, but we're going to see half a dozen similar types of tools out there in the next few months for the 3D asset. There are things out there for voxel art and for point cloud art. And then Get 3D from NVIDIA are designed for 3D asset generation. However, can you get access to them and use them effectively and build them into your own workflows? Point 3E, sorry, is going to be the one that you can at least adapt currently. You would have to talk to NVIDIA or some of these other companies to get access to the other tools. So, and this is an ongoing challenge, right? Where 2D images have proliferated this year because, number one, the tools are relatively easy to understand and jump into. They're also improving rapidly. So if you were in Midjourney 6 months ago, you saw that the images were pretty rough. They were cool, but they were rough compared to where they are now. we're going to see the same leaps and bounds happening across different types of media. So there are generative video tools, for example, that are delivering snippets of video from Google, for example. There's a handful of other companies that are doing that as well. I believe Scenario is working not just on 3D assets for gaming, but for other types of things. I have met with a French company that's doing this for whiteboarding as well, right? So, and some of these tools are already being integrated into other workflows in Adobe, in Microsoft Bing, in Autodesk, and Canva. So frequently, the Promptcraft tool is just going to be a tool within your broader creative suite. It might include image generation and other types of generation too. So I think we have a few minutes left, and what I'm going to do is stop this screen. Hi, everybody. Great to see you again. I'm going to bring up this piece right here, and I just want to give us a little bit more time to dive in on any of those other specific questions that you're having, but also where you're thinking about how these pieces are going to fit into your workflows down the line. So what I do here at Realitycraft is basically help you fill in those creative gaps. I'm a creative strategy leader. You bring the problem to the design lab table, we solve for it together. We do those in sessions of the day, by the week, by the month, and by the hour. So you're welcome to reach out to me at evo.ist if that's something that's needed and useful for you. And I really want to encourage you to go ahead and feel free to jump in on some of those pieces. We're going to talk a little bit more about the outcomes of Promptcraft, and I do want to bring up some of those windows we were in before, but especially I'm going to bring up the Midjourney community window, because if you spent a little bit of time in Midjourney, you're going to notice that you have certain creative tools in Midjourney itself that aren't necessarily provided by some of the other toolkits. And that one in particular can be very useful if you're trying to build a larger body of work. So, oh, and great. It's great to see you. I'm just going to give you some shout outs for everybody. Halcyon, it's great to talk to you. And I think we should specifically follow up about training new models and how those models are shared on things like Google Colab, but also using tools like Scenario GG. I unfortunately did not log into Scenario GG. Maybe I have it logged in on my other machine here. When I'm exploring in Scenario, what I'm doing is I am training models from scratch. And so what I've done, and the image for today's workshop is probably the best example I can give you on this. So let me just upload those really quick for you. When I was creating this particular workshop and thinking about how these tools have evolved over the last few weeks, I jumped into Scenario to think about how to decouple my work from a tool like Midjourney or any other tool. For example, if I felt like it was no longer serving me, or if that company might not feel congruent with the creative process that I wanted to support. And, there's lots of different ways in which our companies don't always support our creative processes. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what those explorations look like. But what I did to start in Scenario was I took about 50 of the cat gems I had made. Those cat gems I started making in July. And then I used them to create a training model in scenario.gg. And then what you're going to see here are some of the output cats that were from my training model. So basically, I took pictures of real gems, real cats, and some of my generative work and combined it to create a model that would give me these cat gems. And you can see that I'm getting closer just something that I can refine into a character for a story at this point. Whereas Midjourney, it can be very difficult to get consistency toward character design. By using this method, I can then take them and sort of refine them and get to something highly specific, right? So then I have that graphic that I was able to put together, right? This sort of thing. So this graphic, I've basically taken 4 images straight out of Scenario once I've made them and I've brought them into Canva. So that's a very, very simple workflow that many of you could try. Scenario.gg, again, early beta tool. There are a handful of similar tools. However, this one is designed to be extremely simple for those who are trying to create gaming or assets of different types. So if you're looking for a more robust tool that can do lots of things, you might like runway.ml. And I'm going to go ahead and drop many of those links into the Facebook group, but I hope that most of you are already there. If you're not already, please reach out and let me know so that we can get you into that group. And the other tool that we looked at today, Simulacra. I'm just going to put that URL back up for those of you who want to try it out later. Simulacra.io/ai.html. And I'm going to encourage you to go back on your own time, maybe take a kid with you or meet someone remotely in the URL. So this is like any other WebXR room, a place where you can have a social experience with someone far away. And it can be really fun to do this with kids as part of art therapy, as, a way to reconnect with your cousins after a couple of years apart. I want you to really think about ways that you can make the kinds of experimentation you're doing more accessible for the people around you. And let's see, which other tools did we discuss today? So we discussed scenario.gg. We discussed Midjourney's Gitbook and midjourney.gitbook.io. And then we're going to go to midjourney.com in just a moment. But I noticed that there was a question that I think we can take quickly here. Curious if I will be prompt crafting my animation pipeline, describing characters by their quirks and personalities. Yes. Yes, you will. And this is something that scenario.gg can help you with as well. So let's say you can create a training model for each of your characters that has 50 images of what they look like with all of those different sort of emotional range points. And then you might prompt to say, give me Jimmy with a mad expression, or give me Jimmy up close scowling, right? And those are the sorts of things that you can prompt for once you've built a model based on each character or based on each setting in your story, whatever that might be. And there are, again, many, many, many different tools that are starting to create this kind of granularity. You can do it in Stable Diffusion. To do it in Stable Diffusion, you're going to want to use a secondary prompt crafting tool. And so these are sort of advanced methods. I'm gonna stick with you a little bit longer here because I'm gonna try and bring those things up for you now. It's me. Maybe it will. I will be able to show you Midjourney today, at least on the back end, and how to organize collections. Some of the more detailed stuff around scenario and how to train your own models, we'll do an advanced class around. So if you're hitting your limits in what you can accomplish in those spaces and you would like to try a more advanced method, we will do an advanced course in a couple of weeks. So don't be discouraged. Feel free to drop those questions as well in the group. And let's see if I can get that Chrome window. All right. So this is what looks like, what Midjourney looks like on. When you are logged in as yourself, you have the capacity to archive, rate your designs, specifically make collections. So, for example, surrealism, sand paintings, the Magrithians for that book I did in September, crystalline structures for an upcoming project. And here I can then see everything I've been generating. So I can take a look at what I got out of this cat run and maybe say, ooh, I'm going to go in this direction or that direction. Once I have maybe 50 cat images I like, maybe I'll go and take them to another program and train a model to work with so that I can get more specific. But I wanted to show you a little bit of what Midjourney looks like on the back end so that you can see not just how to use Midjourney in terms of getting better prompts, right? But you can see as I'm looking at each of these, I can look at exactly what the prompt was just through that overlay. And I'm hoping you're seeing that overlay. I'm not, let me pull this off so that you can see this properly. So when we're in Midjourney, and I know some of you have to go now, and some of you wanted to stick around for a little bit longer, and whatever is right for you, please do it. So I'm just going to try and give you a very quick example of how you might want to use Midjourney to organize your work. This is what the Midjourney window looks like. When I hover over anything, I can see what the prompt was, how they got to it. I can add it to a collection. I can use it. Or I might be able to copy the prompt. And this is a very good thing to try when you're just getting started. Try copying other prompts, modify other people's prompts. Go find art you like and test what's for you. If you're thinking about how to create language that's going to work for you, I want you to think of a diversity of language that includes descriptive words, style words, emotional, evocative words that do not necessarily have a specific object or subject. So things that might throw a juxtaposition in, or that might give you something more interesting. For language more broadly, think about what are the types of emotional responses you want people to have. And does that have a palette or a language for its palette? Things like words from cinematography work very well. Also words from game design and game engines. So Octane Render, Unreal Engine, these are words that you can put at the end of a Midjourney prompt to get something that looks like a particular type of asset or from a particular type of rendering engine. All of those style words use a better output. So it looks, for example, like a 3D logo coin instead of something that looks like a flat logo, right? So even words like 3D, tile, coin, die cut, logo, emblem, action shot. If you're using characters and bodies, think about full body versus portrait versus close-up. So again, these are cinematography words or stage direction words that you can use. In this case, I'm doing the words to look very specific. I might need to put letters in quotes. And you might notice that text really doesn't work very well here. It is very challenging to get 5 letters even to do exactly what you want them to do, as you notice here. By trying to get to a 5-letter logo, I got 100 different versions, most of which were not useful. So some challenges are going to be harder than others in order to get it to be what you want. And some tools are not going to be right for the challenge that you're trying to meet. So logo design might not be great for Midjourney, or it might work. And you might have to keep refining or go watch a great video on how to get to the kinds of inputs you're looking for. So in this case, I wanted a 3D logo. I was looking for something that had some quality of gilding, and you can see exactly where I was going there. But it took many, many different times of adding specific words to get to something that was more useful.
And what I'm doing here is I'm actually going back in time. So as I scroll down, you're seeing where it started, and at the top, you can see where it finished. So that's an example. And there's, for those of you who've been experimenting in these spaces, you start to develop anecdotal experiments that help you get better at things like language. Repeating a word 3 times can be useful, for example. But you can also just go and take a look at how other people have taken these challenges on, or you can go to a Discord group. For example, the AI art groups, Midjourney itself has a great group as well. All of those are resources for you if you're thinking about what that looks like for you. All right. So I think we're running about 5 minutes late, and I apologize, but it's so good to hang out with all of you. It's been so much fun. This has been Midjourney, specifically Midjourney V4 and midjourney.com. If you are looking for more information on how to get better Promptcraft out of Midjourney, why don't you go to midjourney.getbook.io? And that's where you're going to find details on how to work with parameters, how to get better at image prompts, how to potentially work with things like a seed, or how to get extremely detailed in your prompt craft. So if this left you with more things that you want to explore, I would encourage start there. If you're working in Midjourney, if you are not working in Midjourney, you're working in Stable Diffusion or one of these other tools, you might want to consider Prompt Crafter. You might want to consider Prompt Locker. You might want to consider some of the online groups. And then I hope you'll join us at Realitycraft on the Facebooks. So look for Realitycraft. If we are not already connected there, please join the group. That group will go private at some point. So once you've come to this workshop, you are then welcome. You get to come back. Some of these are more participatory sessions in that you can jump in and share your screen too. We do some of those sort of open salon approaches. And I hope that any of you who are feeling like this might work for you will reach out if that's something that you want to do. We do host these workshops with other people. So if you're thinking about how this workshop might work for the types of challenges you're meeting in your community or in your workplace, reach out. We have definitely combined forces with other groups in the past and have figured out different ways to offer this that might be more appropriate for your community. How do we follow on Midjourney? Well, that's a really good question. I'm going to give you my Midjourney handle. Those of you who use Midjourney know that we get handles. I am Evo3215. I ask that you please not necessarily spam me. I don't respond well to spam, but if you ask a good question there or in the Realitycraft group, I will do my best to reach out. And happy to do so. It's really good to see all of you, and thank you for reaching out. Buffy, Cece, Tara, Halcyon, all of you. It's been great seeing you. I'm going to come back on the screen here and just say goodbye to all of you. And thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to continue this workshop series with a more advanced workshop soon. So stay tuned. I will let you know when that's happening. Once you're in the group, you're automatically going to get those details. And yeah, if there's anything I can support you on, whether it's concept development or, something fun, creative, you're working on a theater project, you're thinking about making a new training model or a new book, you need a publishing partner or a producer, reach out. I'd love to talk to you about it. I'm Evo. This is Realitycraft, and have a great day. Thanks for joining me for the Promptcraft workshop.